We're live.
Welcome to COVID 313 Town Hall. We're excited to be with you for another week. I'm Christine Bell. I am a mom of 3 really awesome children, one of which did not sleep very well last night. So I am only running on a couple of hours of sleep here, and but they're awesome kids. I am also the executive director of Urban Neighborhood Initiatives, and I'm honored to serve in that position. We're going to give folks a little time to get on to the town hall because we have a really exciting town hall today. We're going to hear from some experts about kindergarten and the vaccine. So we're really excited about today. So we are translating the town hall to Spanish and ASL. So Cindy, could you please give us the details and how to listen to the Spanish interpretation?
Yes, of course. Hola, para ver esta presentación en español, por favor, vaya al sitio Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation. El enlace está en los comentarios.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and it is so great to see you today. We haven't seen you in a long time, so it's really good to see you. Julie, could you please share the instructions for ASL? Thank you so much, Julie. We really appreciate you being here with us today. Remember, this town hall is a two-way conversation. We want it to be a two-way conversation. So we really want to hear from you. So if you have comments or questions, please put them in the Facebook chat. We've got Libby and Brooke and Lindsay that are waiting, and Ophelia, if you're on the Spanish line, is waiting for your comments and questions. Or you can text them to 313-288-2082. Again, that number is 313-288-2082. And just to make sure that Brooke, Libby, Ophelia, and Lindsay are on their best game, tell us where you're joining us from today and what topic are you most looking forward to hearing about today. So go ahead, drop that in the chat or shoot a text just so that we make sure that they're on top of their game today, which I know that they are. And now I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator, Rajeshri.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rajeshri Gandhi Bhatia. I am the Deputy Director for School Performance for the Grand Valley State University Charter School Office. Very excited to be joining you all again this week and hosting this town hall. As a reminder, again, we are translating the town hall to Spanish and ASL, and we want to give people time to get on the right line and comfortable. So Cindy, one more time, could you please share the information to connect to the Spanish translation?
Para ver esta presentación en español, vaya al sitio Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation. El enlace está en los comentarios.
Great, thank you. Katie, one more time, the instructions for ASL, please. Thank you so much. We, as Christine said, we want to hear from you. So please chat your comments or questions on Facebook or text them to 313-288-2082. Again, that's 313-288-2082. So please stay with us for the next hour so that you can stay informed and be empowered. We have a collection of experts here to share their expertise in a variety of areas, and we have some common questions already prepared to ask them. However, we need you to share your questions and to add more to our town hall. So to ask your questions, use the chat on Facebook or text your questions to the number we've shared. We will have a question and answer after each segment. If we can't answer a question today, we are committed to getting the answers to you by early next week. All questions asked today will be posted with answers on onedetroitpbs.org. Again, that's onedetroitpbs.org. For our experts, first and foremost, thank you for being here today. We sincerely appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us to answer questions on our town hall. We want to remind you to please speak slowly for our translators. They want to make sure that they are translating the important information that you're sharing correctly. Also, we do ask that you turn off your camera when you're not speaking to ensure that our ASL interpreter can be seen. And we ask that you mute yourself when you're not speaking so that we don't get any disturbance. Marty Fishoff is our timekeeper. He will chat you with your remaining time. And if you go over time, one of us moderators will gently remind you to wrap it up. I'd now like to turn it over to our coalition member, Pastor Larry Simmons, and allow him to do his segment. Pastor Simmons?
This is the Zoom era thing, isn't it? You're muted. Hello, everybody. I am Reverend Larry Simmons, and I am a grandparent of 14 grandchildren. And I want to bring a perspective today about this era that we are in, particularly with the events of the last week. Molly, would you please show the segment from the rally that DPTV shared with us?
We saw kids get bullied in school. A lot of kids go back to school and they're being called, saying you bring back virus. There are people walking in the neighborhood and random people will come up and tell them, go back to China. It's been fueling into all the anxiety, and this is a tipping point for us.
I've been name called, I've been bullied, and grew up in Southwest Michigan, so and then living in Detroit, it's one way or the other. It's all white or it's all black, and it's challenging being the only one, right? And so gathering here today in Detroit is this is for me the first time.
This is my first time going marching like this, and I say, you know what, we have to do something. We got to stand up. We cannot sit, we cannot be silent anymore.
There is a swarm of emotions today. It really is so beautiful for all of us to be out here, to be here gathered today in unity, but unfortunately for such a devastating purpose. However, it is a mix of anger, frustration, sadness mixed with feeling eager, feeling liberated, but truly the reason why we are here is bittersweet.
One thing that I really want to note about the Atlanta shooting is that it really seems to parallel the Charleston church shootings in 2015 when hate crimes against Black people began to spike. The shooter was coddled and protected, just like now. The news and the media downplayed the severity of the event until people rallied together, just like now.
One of the things that is so painful is to know that we've been talking about this for a year and that it took a mass shooting for Americans to wake up.
It's going to be different this time, because this time we know it's not okay to remain silent. We know that remaining silent is not an answer. We know that we are American. We know that we are not stereotypes, and we know that we belong here just as much as everyone else.
None of your political standings have anything to do with today. Today is about us as humans.
My family and I came to the United States because our people were being persecuted because they were helping American soldiers in the Vietnam War. And like all parents, ours wanted to have a better opportunity at life. But in 2021, Asian Americans across our country do not feel safe at all.
Over the beginning of Corona, after the first couple of months, I could say 3 or 5 times a day, people would tell me that we started this, how dare you ruin our lives, go back to your country. Well, to be frank, this is my country. I was born in Detroit and I'm not going anywhere.
Words matter. It's called the coronavirus and nothing else. We let it happen by racial slurs, normalizing the fact that it's so common and so normal to say slurs towards Asian Americans and not say anything to fix it, whether that's in the workplace, in your friend groups, on social media. Come on, we've all seen it.
We deserve the respect, we earn it. That's why we'll come here to get our voice heard. We're not begging for it, we earn it, we deserve it.
You can find more.
I want you to hear them. And for a moment, I just want us to be quiet. As we reflect on what we've heard, I want us to take a moment and be silent. And I want us to lift up our prayers and our thoughts for those in Boulder, Colorado. And now I want you to switch your spiritual focus, your mental focus from Boulder to Atlanta. And I want you to lift up your thoughts and prayers for the families of those who were killed there, most of whom were Asian Americans. Thank you. You know, I had a much different presentation planned for today. Last week when we prepared our presentation for you. But you know, in the midst of these tragedies, and they're not new, I want you all to realize that Asian Americans have been confronted with this kind of targeted, almost hidden discrimination since the 1800s. In 1885, there were a group of gold miners who were Asian, and 28 of them were killed in an effort to seize their resources. Shortly thereafter, an act was passed banning Chinese by name from the country. And then throughout the 20th century, different events occurred. The Japanese Americans were interred when German Americans were not. I remember Vincent Chin, a Chinese American who was an auto worker, an engineer. And this was the era in which the belief was that Japanese auto companies were beginning to outpace American auto companies and that they were outselling American products. And so the belief was they were, quote unquote, stealing American jobs. And a group of people assaulted Vincent Chin thinking he was Japanese, because we don't take the time to notice that Chinese are not Japanese, Japanese are not Koreans, Koreans are not Filipino, Filipino are not Thai, Thais are not Indian, Indian are not Pakistani, that there is a whole plethora of ethnicities in Asia as there are in other places in the world. But our sick American racism causes us to lump people together and then to characterize them. Just in the last year alone, there have been almost 3,795 assaults reported just between March 19th, 2020 and February the 28th. And so in the midst of all of this, you might ask as a grandparent, why am I so hopeful for my children? Why am I so hopeful for my grandkids? Why do I think it's going to be any better? Molly, would you give me the share for just a second? And I want to show you why. I want to show you why I am so incredibly hopeful. Why it is that what this generation of young people, what Grace Lee Boggs, who you see over my right shoulder, looks like left to you on the screen, this is why I'm hopeful. This is a screenshot from that rally you saw. I am old enough to remember when a rally like this, because we had rallies for Vincent Chin, they were basically Asian, a few whites. But what has happened today, what is going on today, is that we are now reaching beyond these fake categories of race. Because you know race is just made up. It's a mythology. Racism is real, but race isn't. There's no such thing as race. That's another subject. So we're reaching beyond that, and we are seeing that we are bound together. Look at this picture. Look at all of these who are of all kinds of ethnicities. Look at this picture. See these folks who have come out, not for themselves, they're not Asian. They've come out to support the Asian community. I am so incredibly encouraged by the speakers we're going to have today. I'm so encouraged by the energy. When Black Lives Matter took to the streets, it wasn't just Black people who were saying Black Lives Matter. I was in the northern part of the state, and there were Black Lives Matter signs in people's yards. This is a phenomenal moment. And I want you all to know, you may not feel it because you haven't lived to remember this, but I remember when it was much worse, when people didn't care. And I'm going to come back to Vincent Chin. Vincent Chin's killers were found. They were convicted. I think they were given 3 years and a minimal fine. That would never be tolerated today because of this, because of what you see on this screen, because of those of you who are on this call. So I want you to be encouraged. I want you to know that even though we've lost a great many people to this COVID virus, even though we've lost the great Grace Lee Boggs, she has children and grandchildren in you who have heard the clarion call for justice, who have the courage to stand up and stand out and speak up. I want you to be encouraged that the energy that you are bringing to this is going to transform us so that we know that our connection is not based on melanin, but on mercy and grace and justice. I'm encouraged. I hope you will be, even as we mourn the loss of these Korean women and others who have been lost to violence in this country. Be encouraged. It's getting better, and it's going to get better still. And it's my pleasure to bring to you two women who are helping to make that statement true. They are both active in their communities, both active in the Asian community. Ms. Laura Masumi, Director of Rising Voices for Asian American Families, and Linda, help me if I get it wrong, Linda, Schlichter, Vice President of the APIA Vote Michigan. APIA stands for Asian Pacific Islander American Vote, the APIA Vote. Welcome, ladies, to our 482 Forward Community Town Hall that we do with DPTV. How you doing today?
Pretty good. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for coming. So as we get started, I'm going to have a couple of questions, but you feel free to jump in here and please guide this conversation. I'm just the passenger on your boat today. So tell me, as you look at the photos that I saw and you think about the tragedy and the pain of these 3,800 people, and that number is low, by the way, because many of these have not been characterized as hate crimes, and many others did not get reported. What are your thoughts, and how do you think we can help those of us who share the passion for mercy, grace, and justice. How can we be partners with you in this moment?
Well,
and each of you can answer that question. You want to start, Lee?
Sure, I can start. First of all, I want to thank you for the platform and seeing that short clip was inspiring because, as you said, there are so many young people that are out there and doing the work, right? So you know who I am. My name's Linda Schleicher, and I'm the Vice President of APIA Vote Michigan. And I'm also an American citizen. I happen to be Japanese and African American. So the APIA Vote it's nonpartisan. I want you to know that we're just an organization that serves the Asian Pacific Island community. And we do civic and educational engagement. That outpouring, as you said, of love from our friends and from our allies. And as we're grieving for those 8 individuals in Georgia and 6 of them being Asian descent, it brings me comfort. And it also helps me through really a difficult time, and many of my friends as well. Our president, Chavez and D. Chavez, and also our staff and our members, we want you to know that while we grieve for what has happened in Georgia, then we were hit with those 10 deaths in Colorado. So we want to make sure that everyone knows that we recognize that pain and that we want to extend our love and our prayers to their families as well. Injustice in America is not unusual. When you showed that clip, I thought about what Cornel West said. The first book I ever read was Race Matters. And what I thought about was he said, never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. So that's what I saw today. But then on the flip side of that, we have also seen the ugly part of it, right? Because he said also, you can't lead people if you don't love people. And what have we seen? We've seen some tragic micro insults, microaggressions, and unfortunately, it led to what we saw today. So I hope that we have a few more minutes and I can talk, but I want to give Laura, hi Laura, I want to give you a chance.
Hi.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Before I go to you, Laura, I want to correct something. The 2 men were convicted, but they served no jail time. They were given a $3,000 fine. They served zero, convicted of murder, served 0 jail time. And had to pay
what would say
$3,000.
too, they actually were convicted of murder. And I think that's something that's important for us as we talk a little bit about what we need as a community and what justice looks like. I would say that, increased prosecution in hate crimes is not the full solution, right? Because hate crimes legislation has existed for decades.
Yes.
And in this situation, we see how it oftentimes can be used to center the perpetrators of these atrocities to try to get at, well, what was their motivation? What was their true intent? And we may never fully know all of that. And it should not matter, right? We should be centering the victims, those who are most impacted by these atrocities. So, I would also say, my name is Laura Masumi. Thanks so much for having me. I'm the Executive Director of Rising Voices of Asian American Families. I'm Yonsei, 4th generation Japanese American. My whole family was incarcerated during World War II. And so we very much know that kind of invisibilizing the hate and racism that Asian Americans experience is one of the ways in which white supremacy shows up in our communities. And when it's combined with this lethal force of misogyny, the criminalization of sex work, this is the end result, the product, what happened in Atlanta. And so when we think about what is next, we need to affirm how people are feeling, how people are grieving, offer spaces of healing. Rising Voices is holding a healing session on Saturday, and also stand in solidarity with other communities of color that have experienced very, different but shades of the same white supremacy. So we are partnering with Detroit Action and other coalition members in this town hall too for a healing session on April 10th as well. And there's more information about that forthcoming.
So April the 10th, there's a town hall we all need to be plugged into. Please send that information to us so we can get it out to our viewers. Let me ask a question which is uncomfortable, but I'm not going to say who, but someone who I have a lot of respect for told me I needed to ask. There's a lot of whispers that Asian Americans have been silent. You heard a couple of the people in the clip say this is the first time they've ever come to a demonstration. You want to speak to the question of why it seems, first off, I've got Grace Lee Boggs over my shoulder, so I just want to say that ain't true. Why it appears to people that Asians have not been engaged in the struggle for justice in America. And both of you answer that. Unfortunately, that's going to be our last question, and we're going to have to go. But please, each of you respond.
Well, okay. Well, one of the things that I would like to say is there's a lot of misinformation out there. If you think about it, in the census, the 2020 census, there's like 3.4% in Michigan. So I'm going to speak to Michigan. This is where I grew up. And 1% that have literally been targeted happen to be your have a physical look a particular way, right? So they're either Asian, Filipino, Chinese, Vietnamese. But as you said earlier, that there is this, we're not a monolith, right? We are different in so many different ways, cultures, everything else. But the other thing is that this is just, again, it's a disgusting scapegoating tactic that's been used to actually hurt the Asian community. But this isn't new, right? Because we know that there are people there that are our allies and our friends, and they stood up as well and said, wait a minute, this isn't acceptable. So we've had an outpouring of love, but also that misconception, if you look further, so here, you only got 1% of this particular group, right? I have a friend who's Vietnamese that says, Linda, I work with 5,000 people. There's only one of me. And I thought that was very, very, as the one young man said, very, very honest to say that. And he feels alone sometimes, right? However, I just want to be real clear. When Martin Luther King marched, there were also Asian Americans there with him, right?
That's exactly
They're
right.
all locking arm in arm. When you think about, as you talked about Vincent Chin, I think about the fact that it was the African Americans that stood side by side. And just a note, that one of the gentlemen, I think the last name was Nesbitt or whatever his name was, he got out of town. They allowed him to leave the state. He has never paid retribution. So these are some things that we know, and it hurts, right? So
Lee,
any community that
I got to cut you off. I'm sorry, but I got to get Laura in, and then we want to have questions because we want the audience to be able to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry for cutting you off because this is really important. Laura?
Just really quickly, I would say too that it is 100% right what Linda was saying, that it is a divide and conquer tactic. We also know that historically, right, the model minority myth, the stereotype of putting certain Asian Americans, kind of putting them on a pedestal, saying they're a good minority, that was done explicitly to say, contrast that to Black and brown folks. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that we fight white supremacy with solidarity. We know there's a lot of work that we need to do internally within our own communities to make sure that our folks see all of these different struggles as part of their own struggles. So just as we would ask folks to stand with us, we also want to be out in the streets too, supporting the movement for Black lives and for other folks as well.
I want to thank you for clarifying that and making it perfectly clear. You are right on every single point. Thank you so much. Christine or Registry, do we have questions or do we need to move?
We are going to have a few minutes for questions and answers from our audience. So please be sure to post your questions in the Facebook chat or text them to 313-288-2082. Christine, could you please share our first question?
So we actually have a comment, but I think the comment, I'd like us, the panelists, to speak to the comment, because it feels like maybe we need a little bit of a history lesson. So the comment is, Vincent Chin's murderers were fined $500 at the beginning and was given jail time after the protest. So I think the comment speaks to what happens when we collectively say enough. So, but if but I also feel like maybe we need a little history lesson here. So do either one of you want to speak to this moment in history and maybe how it connects to what is happening today? And so Laura, I see you coming off.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead first?
Well, really quickly, I would say, I think that this would not have, they would not even had additional prosecution. They would not even have had gotten any, attention really, had there not been this activism and outpouring. There's an organization here, American Citizens for Justice, that was formed in response to the murder of Vincent Chin, that really was an epicenter for Asian American organizing in Michigan and kind of galvanizing that support across the country. But I would say too, that may have resulted in hate crimes prosecution, a civil suit. They may have gotten a fine, but I would second what Linda said, which is they never paid a dime. And so I think that while it's important that we, use all of the tools at our disposal to pursue justice, we should recognize too that the solutions we may have currently are insufficient to truly bring about justice.
And I want to add to that, and you've already noted it, but it's important to know that once the minimum amount of how they treated those two individuals, what happened is you had to go to civil. You had to really push and work and fight for justice, because it was very minimal what they gave those two individuals. And again, I was working at Chrysler at the time, and I remember this happening, and it was very disturbing to all of the nation. And it just wasn't in Michigan, but also in California and places like that. And just real quick, because I know that we're gonna be cut off, but don't forget that this week, the 27th, there's also at Hart Plaza another vigil for the individuals that were hurt and killed recently. So we have that going on. If you didn't get a chance to go to the last vigil, please come to this one and support, because we really appreciate everyone that's involved.
So we close with this image: black, white, yellow, red, hands raised, joining together to make it better. Thank you so much. God bless you. God keep you. And we're going to follow up and have some more of this discussion. It's an important one. Thank you. Christine, am I back to you?
Yes, you're back to me. And I just want to ask Laura and Lee, if you could please drop in the chat the visual so that we can make sure we can get that out to folks. And then also the healing sessions. I know that there are many folks that want to stand in solidarity. So if you could give us that information so that we could get it out, that would be incredibly helpful. Thank you both so much for being with us today. This has been a really wonderful segment. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So now we have one of our returning guests, Miss Dr. Olvetta Fuller. We are so grateful to have you here today. I have been really, really excited in anticipation of you coming to talk with us about the vaccines. So Rajeshri is going to take you through some questions, and then we want to remind the audience, here is your moment. Dr. Fuller sits on the FDA panel to review these vaccines and is incredibly knowledgeable, both in her field, but I would also say in community. So Dr. Fuller, Rajeshri, take it away.
Thanks, Christine. Dr. Fuller, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your being here and have been very much looking forward to having you. So I'm going to jump right into questions because I know our time is limited. First and foremost, there's been a lot of discussion about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And so we would love for you to share with us a little bit about about the vaccine, some general information, as well as maybe explain a little bit about why is Johnson & Johnson vaccine only one dose versus the others that have two.
So do we have the flyer? Can you connect it?
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank the 313 Coalition for the invitation, and also thank the previous panelists for that very enlightening discussion of what's happening in America. I want to share that a friend of mine has a new definition, words matter, and doesn't say white supremacy. She calls it a deliberate network of systemic inequities. So a deliberate network of systemic inequities. And we're going to be dealing with that in a forum next Tuesday on generational health disparities. So in terms of J&J, Johnson, or Johnson & Johnson is the company, Janssen is the name of the vaccine. It is a one-dose vaccine for COVID that puts the spike protein, remember that thumb, the same spike, not the whole virus, the spike, into a shell of a virus. So instead of there being messenger RNA, there is a shell of an adenovirus, a different virus that they put the material, the gene for the spike protein in, that takes it to our cells and allows our cells to make spike protein that the body makes an immune response to. And it is a very effective vaccine. It actually, with one dose, you only have to get it once, can get you up to, in the US, in the mid 70% immunity against circulating virus. And that's against mild and serious disease. For serious disease and hospitalizations, the J&J was 100% effective. In other words, where people who got the placebo, there were 16 people hospitalized and 7 died, 7 deaths. For the J&J, there were no hospitalizations and no deaths among the people that showed symptoms. So it is a very effective vaccine at one dose.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. On to today's call, keeping with vaccines for a moment, there are a number of parents who are here to hear from the schools as well and learn about how to support their children educationally. How do you talk a little bit about the vaccine trials with children and what you see as a timeline, and how can parents protect our kids when they're not vaccinated?
Okay, let me come back to that. Let me also say the J&J, which some people compare to the Moderna and Pfizer, actually, we shouldn't be comparing these. If we had an influenza vaccine, which we get every year, when we get to 70%, we think we have the best influenza virus. We're really, really happy. So 72% is really, really a good vaccine. And furthermore, it was tested in a wide variety of people in Brazil, South Africa, and the US. So this is a vaccine that has been in a much broader group of people, much broader ethnicities, much broader ages, much broader comorbidities. And nobody died in the trial that got the vaccine. So now to children. So those vaccines that we have authorized were all tested against people 18 and older as required. Right now, there are vaccine trials occurring for children because we want to protect children as well. Those trials are underway, and we probably will not have the results until July or later, with the hope that we can begin vaccinating children in August or September, assuming that everything goes well. In the meantime, the best way to protect our children and grandchildren is for everybody else who can to get vaccinated. And that's pretty much everybody now. As of March 23rd, the regulations, at least in Michigan, are that anyone 50 years and older is eligible, and anyone, I believe it's 16 and older with an underlying medical condition or disabilities, or that's a caregiver of those for others, can get a vaccine. So the best thing we can do is to actually roll up our sleeves and get one of the 3 authorized vaccines that protect us against disease, protect us against death. And the new data are showing that they even reduce asymptomatic infections which is a really big part of how the virus is communicated. So I would say that's the best thing we can do for our children until the vaccines are available and proven okay for them.
Thanks, Dr. Fuller. So as you talk about rolling up our sleeves and getting vaccinated, when you came on our show before, you talked about not getting the vaccine and waiting. And since then, we understand that you have rolled up your own sleeve and have taken the vaccine. Could you please share with our audience how you made that decision? What sort of brought you to that? Because I know many of us are struggling with that same choice right now.
Yes. So I've always been an advocate of vaccines. They have saved so many lives in so many ways. The thing about the COVID vaccines, I just wanted to see that what was done in the clinical trials, which had a much more limited number or breadth of people, types of people, ages, ethnicities, races, comorbidities. I wanted to see that when we put this into millions of people, that there wasn't something out there that a few people had or some percentage of people had that would make the vaccine have a negative effect on them. And I actually wanted the clinical trial to continue to include the health workers and the elderly before we released it widely. But that's not what happened. So what I did was waited until the first time it came around. I did not say yes. That was early January for me. And actually when I went in to look to reserve it, there were no spaces left. They went just like that. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I felt badly for a moment, like, did I miss my opportunity? And I thought, no, it's okay. And then the second time it came around, I did go in. That was late January, and I registered. The day I was supposed to get it, it was a Pfizer vaccine because that's what the University of Michigan is given. I was like, okay, am I really ready for this? And my husband says, well, this protects you against disease. And what I don't know is what happens in the long run, but I do know what happens with COVID, and we want to be protected from COVID. And so I just said, well, God, you protect me against anything that might be out there in the long run, which is true for any drug or any vaccine that we ever take. So I've completed my vaccine as of the middle of February. And so I'm fully vaccinated. After 2 weeks after the second mRNA vaccine, or 2 weeks after the J&J, you should have reasonably good vaccination. And the good thing about the J&J is that we're told the vaccination protection continues to increase for the next 14 to 28 days. So it gets better as you mount more response. So I am really pleased that I got vaccinated, and I feel like I did the right thing. I have no doubt that I did the right thing. When I go out, I'm still wearing my mask in public, but I'm less paranoid about things.
Thank you for that reassurance. I think, many of us do struggle with that choice, and to hear from someone who studies this is your whole life, to hear that you had, you changed your mind and after reviewing data decided to do it is very reassuring. You talked about wearing a mask, and that leads us right to our next set of questions here about being vaccinated. We're starting to see, numbers rising in terms of vaccinated folks. So give us a little bit of insight into, once you're vaccinated, how should we be behaving? What should we be doing? What should we not be doing? And how do we continue to keep keep it from spreading even more?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So first of all, we have about 27% of the people in Michigan who have received at least one vaccine, and over 66% of the people who are over 65 have been vaccinated, which is really good. So what happens when you're vaccinated? That means that you can now gather with other people who are fully vaccinated. So if you have, like my husband and I got together with our kids' godparents last week because she makes the best pound cake and my husband loves it. So she invited us to come over and get some pound cake and bring it back. And when we got there, she said, y'all can come in, y'all are fully vaccinated. So we sat there about 15 minutes and chatted. But what it means is that if you're with other people inside who are fully vaccinated, then you don't have to wear a mask. If you're with people who are not vaccinated indoors, then they need to be still masked, but you don't have to wear a mask. If you are outside, however, nothing has changed. If you are we shouldn't gather in large groups. If we're outside of our home, we should wear masks because that's sending the right message to protect others. We should not gather in large groups. So some things have changed and some things haven't. And just imagine when we all get vaccinated, we can hug each other. I'm looking forward to hugging my 27-year-old daughter, who is now eligible for vaccination. So those are the things that change. We can gather in with another household if that household is vaccinated, and we can be with unvaccinated people under certain conditions.
Thank you. I think we're all looking forward to those hugs, and now you maybe want pound cake. So
oh, it was really good too, I tell you. And just to sit there and chat with them was even more. We haven't done that in over a year.
Yeah, the social piece, that appetite we have for social interaction. Absolutely. We've been starving for a year. So as we look at what's happening right now, unfortunately, we are seeing a rise of cases, which is sort of, to me, seems counterintuitive as we talk about people who are getting vaccine, the numbers going up. Why are we seeing a rise in cases? What's contributing to that? Is it the mutant strains? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm not sure we completely know. One thing is it's springtime. We're out more. We're going to be engaging with people. People want to get together more. So that's one thing. But secondly, it is possibly that the variants are here. And we know that even here in Washtenaw County, one of the Great Britain variant was brought back in January. And that virus spreads much more quickly. So where it might have taken before an hour to be around someone who was shedding that virus asymptomatically, now 15 to 20 minutes can possibly get us inoculated. So that would explain the increase in cases. And students are now, or people are on spring break, and as you saw what happened in Florida and other places. So I'm not really sure why it's increasing, except that we still have to do those preventions. We don't have the majority of our population vaccinated yet. And we know that people under 65 can get very sick with COVID and can transmit virus. So we still have to remain very vigilant and diligent to do those things. Stay our distance from other people, wear a mask if you're not around your own household or others of another household who are fully vaccinated. But if we do those things, we can slow down the variants. And actually, my greatest fear is that we will have a variant of the variants, right? That will no longer be protected by the vaccine. So the way to stop that is for everybody to either use the preventions and stop the virus from reproducing and to get a vaccine. And that way it won't have the opportunity to reproduce. And that's what we need to get out of this.
Excellent reminders, Dr. Fuller. I think your comments about continuing to exercise those precautions, wearing the mask, gathering in smaller groups, being cognizant. I mean, it's easy to blame a rise in simply spring breakers, but as the weather gets better, this is something we all have to be cognizant of. Christine, how are we looking with questions?
So we have some questions. Do you know how long each vaccine will protect us for? So will we end up having to get a vaccine again next winter if we got it this winter?
Yeah, we don't know yet. Those are things that are actually being looked at right now. As a matter of fact, I'm signed up for a study to look at how long my immunity lasts. We do know some good news is that the recent research data show that the vaccines do protect well against asymptomatic infection. So, you know, we said before that 40% of the infections were from people who didn't know they're infected. Well, if you're vaccinated, it seems like you're also not going to be asymptomatically infected or asymptomatically shedding virus. And that's very, very good.
Great. That's really helpful. How long should someone wait after testing positive to get the vaccine?
Right. So we're told that it should be 90 days after you get monoclonal antibody if you're treated, but at least 14 to 21 days after you test positive or after you get rid of symptoms. Sometimes people are still shedding virus But after you get rid of symptoms, you want to wait at least 14 to 21 days before you get the vaccine. And people who got COVID should get the vaccine because it's a stronger protection than even the infection.
Oh,
So
wow.
getting the vaccine gives you stronger protection than just getting infected.
Wow. So will someone test positive on a PCR test if they have gotten vaccinated?
They should not test positive on a PCR test from the vaccine. If they test positive on a PCR test, they might have gotten infected. Remember, you're not fully protected till at least 14 days after the second vaccine and after the J&J vaccine. So I had a student in my class out of Maryland who got his vaccine and 7 days later was DJing an event and got infected with COVID and then had a positive COVID test, got COVID. Fortunately, he got over it pretty quickly because he was immune, but he was feeling sick for a couple of days, really, really sick. So you want to be sure the immunity is fully there before you in any way change your behavior.
So I just want to summarize that. So for the vaccines that are 2 doses, Pfizer and Moderna, it's 2 weeks after your second shot, and then you're fully vaccinated. With the Johnson & Johnson is
Yes.
1 shot. 14 days after that shot, you are fully vaccinated.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And if you
Great.
test positive by PCR, it probably means you got exposed to virus somewhere. Now, that virus may not make you sick because the vaccines, when you're fully protected, prevent disease. But what we do not know yet, if the vaccines prevent infection, which means that you might be shedding virus, you might get a positive test, you might be putting virus into the atmosphere to be able to give it to somebody else, which is why if we're outside and around other people that are not our household, we still need to be vaccinated. Still need to be masked and keep our distance.
What are your thoughts about vaccinating children, especially toddlers and babies?
Well, I think that once we get some studies underway under our belt to know how much vaccine to give them, that it's a great idea. We also now know that mothers transfer some protection to their children. So mothers that have either been vaccinated or that get COVID, we transfer the antibodies in the breast milk that does show up in the children. So that's also good news. But I think we will be vaccinating children once we know the levels to use, because that's the issue. Adult levels may not be the right levels for children.
So it sounds like, Dr. Fuller, there is a lot we know. We know that we can be protected if we get vaccinated, but there's also things that we're learning and that, we're learning in real time. There are so many questions. There's many questions that are coming in, but we need to wrap up. Before we go, could you just really quickly go over the mask, when you need to wear a mask when you're vaccinated? Can you just quickly summarize that one more time?
So if you're fully vaccinated, 14 days after the second dose or 14 days after Johnson & Johnson, you may gather with one other household that's vaccinated you can be with other people who are vaccinated inside as long as everybody is fully vaccinated. If there's somebody who's not vaccinated, then that person should wear a mask if they're around you. And then if you're outside your home, you should use the same precautions we always did with the mask and distancing to prevent exposing other people or them exposing you. So the main change is that you can gather with other vaccinated people inside in the small group, not these huge groups, but in small numbers. Medium and large groups are still discouraged.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fuller. It is just such a pleasure to have you to share your knowledge and your wisdom and your guidance with us. It for me as a parent, and it gives me such peace to know that we get to talk with you and we get to hear the most up-to-date information, and your honesty is much appreciated. So thank you. We hope that you will come back again. You know, we always ask you, so hopefully you can come back again. We have a few questions that we didn't get to. I will either put them in the chat for you, or we'll send them to you this week. So thank you so much, Dr. Fuller. You have a really great rest of the day. And we are going to move on now to talk about, with Vicki Kavari from the city, who's going to discuss vaccine distribution and door knocking with us. So Vicki, will you please join us?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Vicki. How are you?
I'm great. Great to see all of you again. Great to be with you today. I have some slides. Great.
Yeah, go.
We're going to go through. This is just to give everyone an idea of where we are in vaccine outreach in the city of Detroit. So next slide. So this is an overview of how many people have gotten vaccinated. About 17% of all Detroiters. We have about 100 as of this morning. We have vaccinated 178,000 individuals, and we have received about 229,000 doses of the vaccine. The gap there is mostly second doses that have yet to be administered. We are not hanging on to doses, but everybody who gets a first dose is automatically scheduled for a second dose. So next one. So current eligibility, and I think Dr. Fuller referred to this, and just wanted to thank her for her great presentation and information. Really important information. The main number, any Detroiter right now, age 50 and older, regardless of what their health conditions are, can get vaccinated, can schedule an appointment. This number, 230-0505, is the key number. We have a bunch of sites all over the city that people can request near their house, with TCF and Ford Field downtown being the biggest sites, but certainly not the only sites. We have Saturday sites. We have pop-up clinics that are also organized, and the health department is doing a lot of clinics on site at companies right now as well. Again, there's no cost for the vaccine. If a caller makes an appointment and has other people in the car with them, that person can make an appointment for those folks as well, as long as they are over 50 or over 16 and have an underlying condition. And to just let you know, the underlying conditions, they're pretty liberal about what those are, and they can range from asthma, diabetes, any kind of disability, whether mental or physical, etc. So we just need to try to tell as many people as possible, just go and make an appointment, and the people on the calls at the call center will go through eligibility with you and location. When people do make an appointment, it's important that they know that they can bring, that they have to have proof of their birth date, and that could take the form of a passport, a birth certificate, or a driver's license, anything that has their birth date on it, and some proof of Detroit residency. And this can include a utility bill, a rent receipt, or a license, or a Detroit ID, etc. So if folks are undocumented and don't have a license or an ID, then we will accept a utility bill or a rent receipt, anything that has their name and a Detroit address on it. Next slide. So this just came out on Monday. Again, I think Dr. Fuller alluded to this. Anyone in 18 or over who reports to a job site, if they live in Detroit or work in Detroit and have to physically report to a job site, can get an appointment for a vaccination. Again, 16 years or older with any kind of underlying condition, Detroiters 50 and over, regardless. And then there's a whole bunch of other categories that have been out there since January: healthcare workers, teachers, childcare workers, etc. All this will change April 6th, when the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan will announce that anyone 16 or over regardless of what their health conditions are, will be eligible to be vaccinated. So any adult 16 or over will become eligible. I think it's going to be announced on the 5th. And so as of the 6th, I think will go to everyone, regardless of where they work, live, what age they are, what health they are. Everyone will be eligible. Next. All right. So the health department is doing a lot of outreach. These 4 things just represent all of the different areas where they have gone on site to vaccinate people. So senior citizen apartment buildings, nursing homes, homeless shelters, senior Saturdays. We have 4 locations. People can make appointments at churches in neighborhoods. So right now, Galilee Baptist in Northeast Detroit on East Outer Drive, Great Faith Ministries, I think on Oakman and Grand River. We have New Providence Baptist on Plymouth and Southfield, and Greater Emmanuel on 7 Mile and Schaefer are the ones, and more will come. New centers will come back online on April 10th. We'll have more sites. Companies, large companies can request vaccinations clinics at their site. Smaller companies can work with other businesses together to create a single vaccination clinic where the health department will come out. We're also doing pop-ups, whereas like LaSed has one of the most successful pop-ups in Detroit, where they have over 200 people every week come to their site to get vaccinated. And if you're interested in any of this, I can put you in touch with the person at the health department that helps organize pop-up clinics. We're asking that if you do have a pop-up, it's during the week, and we're asking folks, the site, to have 200 people that will sign up to get vaccinated. Next. Our overall goal in our canvassing outreach is to vaccinate residents at full speed with equity front and center. So we really want to vaccinate as many people as quickly as possible in the city of Detroit, but really with a value front and center that we get to Detroiters that are most vulnerable. So low-income Detroiters, African Americans, Latinos, areas of the city that have suffered the most under COVID, those are our focus. And right now, about 70% of all residents over 65 have already gotten vaccinated. But I know that it's going to present a big challenge to get residents that are younger to get vaccinated. So we'll be working intently on those, especially people who live in apartment buildings, don't have internet, that kind of stuff. So we don't want to leave anyone behind in this vaccination effort. We're going to do a massive canvassing operation in 2 phases. The first phase is starting already. We have canvassers out on the street right now. We've done about, I would say, 15,000 doors, mostly around the senior Saturday vaccination clinics. But in mid-April, we're going to start to knock on every single residential door in the city. So there'll be over 200,000 doors that we'll knock on at least once. And then in areas with low vaccination rates in phase 2, from probably mid-June until September, we will be knocking on doors multiple times in those areas that might have a low vaccination response rate. Next. All right. So I ran the census campaign, and the last time I think I was on a town hall was to talk about the census. We learned a lot of lessons there about engaging people who might be suspicious of whatever, mistrust government, etc. So one of the things we really have a value on is going to where people are, and that's the impetus behind this massive canvassing effort. Right now, we're targeting seniors in lower income areas. The general public will be targeted in April through the end of May, and then we'll be just going to every neighborhood that shows these low response rates throughout the summer. We're also got flyers on vaccinations in all the Meals on Wheels from AAR, from the Area Agency on Aging. We're going to be at food sites, grocery stores. Our main focus is that we don't want any Detroiter to be able to say, I did not know how to make an appointment. That's why it's a phone number instead of being online, so that we want to get this phone number out to as many people as possible so they know that they can call that number. They don't need a smartphone. They don't need internet access. They can call that number, get a response, and get an appointment. So I think for folks on this call, promoting the call center appointments is really going to be key. We're also going to be using paid media, a lot of social media, billboards, radio, and TV, so that everybody knows and will blanket the city with this message of call the call center and make an appointment. Next. All right. So what can you do? What can your organization do? Get the word out to everyone. The information Dr. Fuller provided is really key, because we noticed, at least from the conversations we've had on the doors that we have canvassed, is older people, 90% of them are either got vaccinated or have an appointment. It's the younger folks under 40 that have been the ones that express a lot of hesitancy. And most of the things that we're hearing right now about hesitancy is they're unsure how safe it is because of the speed at which it was developed. And I think Dr. Fuller spoke to that. Side effects are another concern. But I think once we get to the point where we're vaccinating a lot of people, other folks will see their friends, their family, their neighbors who have been vaccinated, and I think feel more comfortable about getting the shot themselves. But we are not at that point yet. We've got to vaccinate a lot more people to get to that point where more people are going to be less hesitant because they see in their own families and their friends who have gotten vaccinated that it is safe, and it's a good thing for them to get. So blasting this number out, saying it out in your newsletters or your email blasts. We've asked companies like DTE and Comcast to actually put the number on their bills that they send out. On DivDat machines, we've gotten DivDat to put the call center number for appointments on all the DivDat machines, because we know a lot of folks use those machines who don't necessarily have bank accounts or credit cards. If your group is interested in having a speaker, the health department has some really great folks who can speak to the safety of the vaccine, who could speak to the more medical aspects of the vaccine. And again, if you want to do a pop-up, I can put you in touch with the folks in the health department that are doing that. So with that, I think that's the end of the slides, but if there are any questions about any of that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Vicki, it sounds like you, like always, have this under control, and we are going to get every Detroiter possible to get vaccinated. So thank you for all the hard work that you do, particularly the on the ground work to letting Detroiters know how they can get vaccinated, and the thoughtfulness in making sure that it's accessible. We'd love to have you come back and talk a little bit more about language accessibility.
Yes.
There were some questions about that. So I think we'll just ask you to come back to talk about it. And we appreciate so much you being here today. So you have a wonderful rest of the day. And we are going to move on to our education segment so we can talk about something that is near and dear to my heart with 3 young children, which is kindergarten Roundup. So today we have Nancy Garvin. She's the early childhood specialist with New Paradigm, and Sharon Ware, director of ELA, and they're both from New Paradigm for Education. And then we welcome back, and we're so glad to have her, Miss Ironetta Wright, who is the Deputy Superintendent for Detroit Public Schools Community District. So I want to welcome all of you to the segment today. Hi, it's good to have you. Hopefully Ironetta will come off mute. Oh, here she is. You gotta love the moment that we're in, right? Like, you just can't walk into a meeting and then you're there. There's like a process. So we wanted to talk about kindergarten. We know by looking at the data that the largest group, particularly in Detroit, the largest group of students that have been, I don't want to say missing, but that have not been connected to school have been kindergartners. And we know by polling folks that parents, well, there's a couple of things that parents don't necessarily think that kindergarten is necessary. We don't have to send our kids to school in Michigan until the first grade. And then, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I can speak for myself. It's very hard when I have to let my son, who is in first 5, get out of the car and I don't get to walk him into school. It breaks my heart a little bit every day. But I know it's important for him to have that experience. So the first question that I have for you is, why is kindergarten important? And so we'll let Ironetta go, and then Nancy will go to you. So Ironetta, why is kindergarten important?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Kindergarten is truly important because many of our students do not spend time in academic activities prior to starting kindergarten. They're not always in pre-K programs or Head Start programs. So their first real interaction with instruction, with understanding any of their readiness skills comes from when they start kindergarten. And we see it all too often where we do have quite a few students that when they wait until first grade, they start at first grade, but they're already behind. And so we know that a lot of students, as we think about things such as ELM, the early literacy learning model that talks about the number of words that students that are in poverty experience before the time they even get to school versus those that are not in poverty. And the difference is really around 200,000 words. And so the sooner we can get students in school, interacting with instruction, interacting with words, interacting with peers, being involved in just authentic play, it starts at their developmental process.
I will
Thank you.
add, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to participate in this today. It is a very wonderful town hall with very pertinent and important subjects. And kindergarten is very close to my heart. And it is imperative that children start in kindergarten for all the reasons that Ms. Wright just talked about. And what the schools do, they will create a formula for success for each child. We have to look at what we've just come out of. We've just come out of a pandemic, and a lot of children have just been in their homes. No outside, no working, playing with friends. You have children that are in preschools that have face-to-face activities. They're virtual. And then you have many that aren't having any experiences whatsoever. And so parents really, I think fear is big. They're afraid. And we need to absolutely let them know that they don't have to be afraid. The schools have been very particular about safety. We have currently in the new paradigm schools, we have remote and we have small pods of face-to-face, and there's a lot of safety measures. We don't know what it's going to look like next year. It depends on the virus, but the imperative piece of this is that they join a kindergarten. And there are many choices for families. So you want to find the choice that works for your child. You want to go, well, for example, at New Paradigm Schools, we have a partnership with the parents. Right now, that is needed more than ever. And the parents that we have this year have told us that they want official certificates of teaching this year because they are engaging with their children at home, which I'm sure you are too, Ms. Bell.
Yes, yes, I am.
And so
I was very glad when the face-to-face option came available.
Developmentally, the brain is like popcorn from birth to 5, and their neural synapses are just popping and learning, and you've got to capture that. As Ms. Wright said, when they come to school in first grade, they're just already so behind in the number of vocabulary words in every aspect of their development, and our children deserve better. And so I would advise parents to call the schools that they're interested in and talk to somebody and get information. I know in New Paradigm, we have what's called parent navigators. And we help walk the parents through their fears, through the enrollment piece, anything, because we cannot have interior kindergarten roundups this year. We're having virtual kindergarten roundups. We're having virtual tours, virtual enrollment dates, but they've got to get to school. I'm a part of Hope Starts Here. We partner with them. And one of the big imperatives is to align the preschool students' age to kindergarten, because it's a huge gap in the city. So you hit it right on the nose.
So both of you talked about the 20,000 words, right? Behind, if kids aren't in kindergarten. And so I think for a lot of parents, I remember my son's kindergarten teacher saying to me at the curriculum night, "This is not the kindergarten that you remember." And so you both have sort of spoken to that. So what's different about kindergarten now than what we all might be remembering? And then what do we know about play and how that's important to development? I know those are maybe two really big questions, but if just in like 30 seconds you each could touch on, why the 20,000 words, what's happening in kindergarten that even happens, that vocabulary happens. So again, we'll start with Ironetta and then go to Nancy. And Shannon, if you want to jump in, please do so. Go ahead, Ironetta.
I think the overall expectation for what children need to learn, know, and do in the era that we're in now is different than when we were in kindergarten. While many of the skills are the same, the entry-level skills are the same. So you need to know things like your alphabet. You need to know your colors. You need to know your name. You begin to use your gross motor skills as you're thinking about moving into handwriting and those kinds of things. They're really the same in terms of that. But already we're starting out, when you think about the kindergarten curriculum that we look at, and because of where we are with standards and the expectation for standards, we start students at a higher level of thinking. They're beginning to use analytical skills at a level that we may not have seen 20 years ago as we think about what students were doing in terms of kindergarten. So they're taking their basic skills and they're very quickly moving into applying those basic skills as you're moving through the curriculum and the expectations of what's happening in the world. I think the other
Mine's off.
I think someone's off. I'm not on mute. Ms. Garvin, okay, great. I think the other thing that's also important is understanding the era of technology that we're in. So as a result of technology and technology support, many say that it's a plus and a minus, because we have technological programs that do allow students to engage on a lot of different levels. And so the development that happens for them by being outside or by participating in recess or interacting with others or learning how to properly play with one another in terms of it's my time to have the ball versus your time to have the ball. Those skills really start as students are working with one another, as our children are working with one another. And I think sometimes, just our children engaging in the gaming so early, they're digital natives. So as it's like as they come out of the womb, they know how to do all of these things already. I look at my 3-year-old nephew and I'm thinking, why do you know this already? But they do. And so it's now also making sure that what we're doing in the classrooms is just as highly engaging as what they're interacting with through those other resources and through those other modes.
I'll take it from here. I agree. The kindergarten of old is much different from what we're experiencing now. And parents sometimes are like, okay, this is not what I did with my older child or what I did when I was in school. Some of the huge differences are kids back then had a different type of setup for school, right? There was nap time. There was half-day kinder most of the time. There was play, learning through play. We still have learning through play now, but now it's through technology. Like, how do you learn how to use the computer? How do you take your NWEA assessment on the computer? Fortune 500 companies are looking for those individuals that are able to work on teams. And so in kinder, the first set of how do you do school is how do you communicate with each other? How do you work in partnerships, right? Those are the people that are employed and stay employed. And so it's with today's kinder that we take a look at how do you teach them how to be good citizens. And at New Paradigm Schools, our kinder program is set up as such. We teach them social skills, how to govern each other, how to have win-win conversations. What does school look like, right? How to communicate. We also teach the 5 core subjects, reading, writing, math, and social studies. But with that, we layer in social emotional because of the pandemic, right? So if your family is going through a crisis, how do we support you emotionally in this learning? And with the program that we have in place, it's such a successful program that by the end of the school year, 95% of New Paradigm students that join our kinder program, they're reading and ready to be first grade ready. And when we say reading, they know how to word call and comprehend the text. And so that's huge when you talk about setting up a formula for being college and career ready. And at the Detroit schools, we work together as a coalition, whether you're in charter or a public, we work together as a community in Detroit to make sure that no matter what program you pick for your kids, that they're going to learn. And at New Paradigm, we stand by that particular learning. And with the system that we have in place, our kids, our kinder students through 12th grade, all have their own computer. And just like Ms. Wright said, what does the technology look like for those digital natives, right? They know how to do computers. They know how to do technology. If you go into our classrooms, you'll hear them talking to the teachers to say, you have to pin yourself. You have to add it to the chat. So they even know the language of the subject, right? And so you think little ones can't, but I'm here to tell you that they can.
Great. So I wanna, and I just think that the play piece is so important, right? The fine motor skills when we're cutting, when we're playing with Play-Doh, those are we may just see it as, oh, we're, as parents, oh, they're just playing, but that's how you gain the muscle strength to actually hold a pencil and to do your handwriting and the reading aloud. I mean, I was amazed when I was like, oh, my son's going to be reading after kindergarten. And that just seemed, but so thank you for laying out that kindergarten does look different. And some of it does actually look the same, but we just know more about what the play does for the brain and why it's so important. And like you said, Shannon, into really, this is the start of how you build your career, if you will. So I'd like each of you just to take a moment to, this has been a really scary time. And with our babies, our 5-year-olds knowing they can't, get vaccinated, and all the uncertainty, can you talk a little bit about what will kindergarten look like next year? And how, is there anything you want to say to parents right now to minimize their fear of sending their child, whether it's your first or your last? Sending your child off to school is a really hard thing, I think, to do. But so Ironetta, go ahead, and then we'll go to Nancy or Shannon.
Definitely. Thank you for the question. So I think for us, as you know, we have been in some form of face-to-face instruction since July. And we started the school year face-to-face. We had students in school. We had pre-kindergartners in school that were face-to-face as well. And so that was up until we suspended face-to-face instruction in November. When we returned to face-to-face instruction in February, we again had pre-kindergartners and kindergartners that were in school. And I think one of the things that I would share with families, and it's listening at Shannon, it's definitely rewarding when you're looking at the little ones at this point in the year and you're watching their navigation. You're watching them mute themselves and go into the chat and mute others because they figured out how to do that. And the teachers have walked them through that. But what I will share with families is it's much like Ms. Garvin said earlier. Our children can, and I know Shannon and Ms. Ware said the same thing, our children can. It's a matter of us giving them the instruction on what they need to do. So as we're walking through our schools, we have worked with our students on the safety precautions that we use for them. It's become really just a part of their day. So as they come in, they know they walk in, everyone is masked, the students keep their masks on. They're accustomed to doing that. They know to remind one another about their masks. When they come in, you can see them come into the school building. In most of our K-8 schools, they take their temperature from their wrist because it's easier for them to do that. We also have the face monitors that take the temperature as well. But you see them coming in. We give them, of course, the visual cues and the reminders about 6 feet apart. So there's something on the ground. We have, markings on the ground that would show throughout the building, coming into the building, throughout the classrooms, where that 6 feet space would be. And also the making sure that we're teaching students about how to do proper hygiene. So how to wash your hands and how long you need to wash your hands. And how you appropriately cover your mouth if you have to cough. And even with the mask on, you're coughing in your elbow and not in your hand. Sanitizing as you're moving, using the resources that are in class. So you will see our students that are sanitizing their computers if they're going to share a computer with someone else. You will see them as they're walking to the cafeteria, for example. You see them appropriately distanced as they're doing that in class as well as in the cafeteria. So I think it's a little unique to us because we would think that it just doesn't feel as natural. But we also have to consider that since last March, many of our children, whether they've been in school or not, they've been a part of our community. And you couldn't go to the grocery store, you couldn't go to Kroger or Meijer without having a mask on before you came in. And that applied to our younger children as well. And so it's really just reinforcing those things that are happening at home, working with parents and helping them understand how we're reinforcing those, and the teachers continue to work with them as well. So circle time may look a little bit different. Instead of it being a full circle time, it may be where everyone is facing forward and they're spaced out on every other box on the carpet instead of how we would generally do it, but the students really follow the cues that we provide for them in the classrooms. I think the other thing that we're noticing is for our students, and it has been the case at this point in our district, any of the younger students that have been positive, generally it's because they have someone in the home that's positive. And so they're not really contracting COVID from students in school with them. It's really something where they had an older sibling or they had a parent that was in the home with them. So when you think about that, that also gives a level of safety. And one of the things that we're also exploring for next school year is also the opportunity to do random testing through the school. And I think that as well is something that gives parents a peace of mind, especially when you're thinking about, your 5-year-old going into the school. You would like to know, even if they are positive and they're asymptomatic, you would like to know that so that you then know how to take the necessary precautions.
So thank you, Ironetta. We have ran out of time. This is such an important conversation. We want to make sure that kids know and parents know that kindergarten is open next year. Enroll your kids in kindergarten. So what I'm going to ask you all to do, Nancy, I heard you say that New Paradigm has parent navigators. Could you please put in the chat how a parent gets a hold of those parent navigators? And then Ironetta, can you put in the chat where parents can enroll, how they get the information to enroll their students in kindergarten? this won't be the last time we ask you guys to come on and talk about kindergarten. We know that, it's March and we've got some ways until September. So we want to keep raising this so that parents can ask the questions that they need to ask to feel comfortable to put our smallest little ones in your care.
Christine,
and how important that is.
If I could just add one thing, I did drop it in the chat, but I did hear that we are doing virtual roundups, but we're doing face-to-face roundups as well. So from the chat, you're able to see at our enrollment site, and you can contact the schools directly. Those start in April, in late April.
Great, good to know. Nancy, when does your enrollment start for kindergarten roundup?
We have started, but we have a big push starting April 7th, and there'll be information forthcoming about that.
Great. Thank you all so much. Thank you for being with us again today. We really appreciate it. It's time to wrap up our town hall. We have one announcement. My organization with our good friends at Congress of Communities and the Southwest Detroit Business Association is holding a Southwest Detroit Trades Fair today. It's today from 4 to 6. So the information is here. It's via Zoom. It's virtual. So if you want to learn about trades, please join us. And Lindsay, who's moderating the chat right now, you actually can text her and ask her any questions you have. So her number is right there. So thank you all so much for being here. We are deeply grateful for all of the folks that watch us every week. We are also deeply grateful for all of our panelists for coming today. This town hall is truly a group effort. So before we go, I'd like everybody to turn their cameras on. And we want to remind everyone to stay healthy, stay powerful, and stay strong. Have a great day, everybody.